Nicole Kidman has filed for divorce from Keith Urban after 19 years of marriage.
Keith and Nicole's shocking $325 million split that rocked the movie and music worlds. Now we're tracing the clue.
I'd done really nothing about, blew our marriage to smithereens.
Nicole Kidman's divorce bombshell just shattered the illusion of Hollywood's perfect couple. And the wildest part? She didn't have to say a single word to make her point. On September 30th, 2025, Nicole officially filed for divorce in Nashville, citing that polite little phrase the rich and famous always hide behind, irreconcilable differences. But behind that clean legal label sits a brutal truth written in numbers that speak louder than any interview ever could. 306 versus 59. That's not just math, that's a message. Nicole gets their daughters for 306 days a year, while Keith only gets 59. That means 83% of their time goes to mom, and a painful 17% to dad. Those numbers don't whisper heartbreak, they scream it. This wasn't some peaceful split or a love story that ran its course. No, this was a long, quiet unraveling that played out behind the cameras while fans were distracted by red carpets and award speeches. Nicole, the woman the world saw glowing beside Keith at every gala, was apparently living two lives. One as the devoted wife and another as the single mother trying to hold the family together while her husband chased stages, fame, and spotlight after spotlight. And here's the kicker. Nicole hasn't said a single word. No interviews, no cryptic quotes, no emotional posts.
We chatted very briefly. I was trying to play it cool, but inside I felt like I'd snuck into the royal ball. Simply because Nick had such a truly otherworldly aura about her, and I felt a bit like I was meeting a real-life princess. And despite all of that, I did manage to get her phone number on a tiny piece of paper, and I carried that number in my pocket for well over a week. I pull it out and look at it, put it back in my pocket. I was scared.
Keith's team has stayed completely silent too, but in Hollywood, silence is never peace. It's strategy, because when the stars go quiet, the court papers start shouting, and oh, what those documents reveal cuts deep. This wasn't about some headline-grabbing scandal or betrayal. It was about exhaustion, the kind that breaks even the strongest woman when she realizes she's been carrying a whole marriage on her back while her partner keeps chasing applause. The most shocking thing about Nicole and Keith's split isn't what they said, it's what they didn't. Ever since that September 30th filing became public, there's been no soft, "we've grown apart" Instagram captions, no smiling PR photos of mutual respect or lifelong friendship, just pure cold silence. And that silence hits harder than any interview could, because when people this famous vanish from their own narrative, it's the legal paperwork doing all the talking, and that paperwork is brutal. Filed in Davidson County Circuit Court in Nashville, Tennessee, these documents aren't rumor or tabloid talk, and they're official records signed, stamped, and filed.
I had no idea what was going to happen to us. And if you want to see what love in action really looks like, give that a whirl. Nick pushed through every negative voice, I'm sure even some of her own, and she chose love.
The truth is right there in ink, and when you read between the lines, the picture that forms isn't one of sudden heartbreak. It's a slow-motion collapse, not from a single explosion, but from years of distance, neglect, and emotional erosion. The story written inside those papers isn't one of a love gone wrong overnight. It's of two people who stopped walking in the same direction a long time ago. Each page exposes how small cracks turned into permanent fractures. Every clause about custody or property tells a deeper emotional story, of one where Nicole didn't just walk away, she finally stopped pretending, and that's what's got people talking. Because when you look closely, the math of this divorce tells you everything about their marriage, who really had the time, who made the sacrifices, and who was actually present. Take a closer look at that custody deal. It's the heart of the whole story. Nicole Kidman gets primary residential custody of their daughters, Sunday Rose, 17, and Faith Margaret, 14. Translation? She's the parent who's been there all along. She gets her girls for 306 days out of the year, while Keith only has them for 59. That's less than 2 months. Barely enough time to watch a season of their lives. It's not co-parenting, and it's one parent living the life and the other checking in when his schedule allows. And those numbers don't just show imbalance.
There's times in which you can balance it and you do less, and then you can do a little more and you do less, and finding that balance is part of the journey. Because you make mistakes, you overdo it. So then you go, okay, now I've got to go and take care of this part of my life because it's suffered. And so that it's constantly rebalancing.
They prove who's been holding it down all these years. The paperwork even states that Nicole remains the girl's full-time parent in Nashville, while Keith maintains his own separate home elsewhere. Sure, the papers throw in the usual legal fluff. Both parents will make major decisions together. But let's be real. How can you make decisions together when one of you is always on the road? Those late night talks, early school mornings, and teenage breakdowns? That's all Nicole. She's been both mom and dad for most of the year, and now it's finally official. This is not a story about equal teamwork. It's about imbalance written in black and white. It's what happens when one partner keeps giving and the other keeps chasing fame. And it's impossible to miss what the math really means. 83% with mom, 17% with dad. That's not equality. That's emotional distance turned into legal fact. What hurts most is knowing that this kind of custody deal doesn't happen out of nowhere. It takes years of missed moments, broken promises, and lonely nights to get here. It's not a punishment, it's proof. Proof that while Nicole was anchoring the home, Keith was anchoring stages across the world. Now here's where things get even more revealing: the money. Because if the custody plan told the emotional truth,
and go back to see her, and she was like, maybe wait a minute, because I think, you just need to take care of yourself right now, Nikki. So, I'm doing that more.
the financial details confirm it. While the court documents never say outright that Keith's career was the problem, they don't have to. There's no line about cheating or substance issues, no accusation of misconduct. It's simple. Both sides agreed to this setup, and that's exactly what makes it sting. Think about that. A father agreeing to see his kids for only 59 days a year. Either he couldn't fight for more time because his career made it impossible, or worse, he didn't want to fight for it because the spotlight mattered more. Either way, the math speaks louder than any statement. A dad who's truly hands-on doesn't sign off on being a part-time parent. And let's be honest, this distance didn't start with the divorce. It's just finally being documented. The papers didn't create the problem, they exposed it. Keith Urban has been booked solid for years. His 2024 album High dominated charts, and his 2025 High and Alive world tour was one of the biggest moneymakers in country music. Dozens of shows, endless flights, back-to-back red carpets. The man was living his dream, but now we know the cost. That dream had a quiet price tag, and it's printed right there in the court filings. Every ticket sold, every stage lit, every cheer from the crowd came with a trade-off. Missed birthdays, missed milestones, missed moments with his daughters.
Now comes the shocking news that Keith Urban moved out of their home at the beginning of this summer and has his own place in Nashville. There's also a report that he's seeing another woman.
What we've learned is that she really has been fighting hard over the past 3 months or so to save their marriage. This isn't what she wanted.
And now the cold reality of that trade is written in legal ink for the world to see. So while fans may still picture them as that loving red carpet couple, the truth is way colder. This marriage didn't fall apart overnight. It faded over time, quietly, painfully, until the only thing left holding it together was a lawyer's pen. And that's the real heartbreak here. Not betrayal, not scandal, but silence. The kind that creeps in slowly and eventually replaces love. Because when you dig through those documents, you see it clear as day. Nicole Kidman didn't just file for divorce, she finally filed for freedom. Think about it. A world-touring musician like Keith Urban isn't just busy, he's gone. Over 200 days a year on the road. That's more than half his life spent away from home, away from Nicole, and away from his daughters. Sure, the lights flash bright when he's center stage, but when the crowd fades and the curtains close, those empty hotel rooms tell a colder story. Because no matter how many encores you get, loneliness doesn't care about fame. Meanwhile, Nicole Kidman was playing a completely different game. She's every bit as successful. Forbes literally crowned her the highest paid actress of 2024. But Nicole's success has rhythm and structure. She films for a few months, then heads back to her base, Nashville. Even while shooting the long-awaited Practical Magic sequel in 2025 with Sandra Bullock, she never drifted far from home. The difference between her and Keith wasn't about who was more famous, it was about who was more present. Nicole built her world around family, Keith built his around the road, and that gap, that constant distance, didn't appear overnight. It defined their entire marriage. You don't need to read between the lines, the timeline does the talking. And here's where it gets even more jaw-dropping. The official separation date is listed as September 30th, 2025, the same day Nicole filed for divorce. But if you look deeper into those court files, there's a twist that changes everything. Keith Urban signed the permanent parenting plan nearly 2 months earlier, on August 1st, 2025. That's right. Long before the world even knew anything was wrong, Keith had already agreed to the split and to just 59 days a year with his own kids. Let that sink in. He didn't argue, didn't negotiate. He signed. It's calm, it's quiet, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. That single signature speaks louder than any statement he could ever give. It's the silent acceptance of someone who already knew what time it was, that the marriage, the home life, and even the family rhythm had slipped out of reach. And the documents go even further. Buried right there in the court filings is one stunning financial move that says everything about his priorities. Keith Urban prepaid all his child support to Nicole. Not month by month, not quarterly, not yearly. One single lump sum covering everything he'd owe. That's not normal. That's Hollywood efficiency at its coldest. In most divorces, child support comes in steady payments tied to income, time with the kids, and shared responsibilities. But Keith? He cut one massive check and called it a day. Why? Because it's convenient. Because when you're a man constantly flying from city to city, there's no time to remember court deadlines or monthly deposits. Easier to pay once and keep moving. The same way it was easier to agree to 59 days than to rearrange a world tour to be a full-time dad. You can read it between every line. This wasn't just a parenting plan. It was a strategic exit. He streamlined the breakup the same way he structures his career. Clean, controlled, efficient. That lump sum didn't just settle money, it erased reminders. It cut off the emotional ties that would have pulled him back into family life every month. And while the papers never spell it out in bold letters, the math says what the lawyers won't, career came first. But there's a darker undertone that the legal language tiptoes around, one the public can't forget. Keith's past struggles with addiction have always hovered like a shadow. Back in 2006, just 4 months after marrying Nicole, she staged a full-on intervention that pushed him into rehab for 3 months. It was meant to be his fresh start, his redemption arc. But maybe those old ghosts never completely left. At Nicole's 2024 AFI Lifetime Achievement Ceremony, Keith took the stage and gave what fans called one of the most emotional tributes in Hollywood history. His voice cracked, his eyes glistened, and it looked like pure love. He said, "If you want to see what love in action really looks like, give that a whirl." It melted hearts. But when you fast forward just 17 months later to those divorce numbers, 306 days with Nicole, 59 with Keith, that same quote hits differently. What once sounded romantic now feels like a farewell wrapped in nostalgia. And that's the heartbreak of it all. And the documents never mention drinking, touring strain, or personal struggles outright. But the silence between those lines screams louder than any headline. Because when a mother requests 83% custody and the father agrees without so much as a court fight, it raises one haunting question. Why? Was it simply the brutal touring schedule, or something deeper? A quiet worry about his reliability, his energy, or his emotional consistency? Courts don't hand out lopsided custody without a reason. Sometimes it's long work hours, sometimes it's quiet doubts that never make it to paper. Either way, Nicole clearly didn't feel comfortable leaving her daughters for long stretches. And Keith didn't argue. That kind of agreement doesn't come from peace, it comes from resignation. His choice to sign off on that deal without a single objection says more than any interview ever could. Whether it was fatigue, guilt, or old patterns resurfacing, Keith's pen confirmed what the numbers already hinted. Nicole was the anchor holding everything steady. She was the constant, the rock, the one keeping the family grounded while he drifted from city to city. And then comes the most surprising twist, the money split. After 19 years of marriage, the financial breakdown is almost too clean to believe. Both Nicole and Keith waived spousal support, meaning not a single dollar changes hands beyond child support. That's unheard of in celebrity divorces this big. No monthly checks, no shared profits, no public feuds about who owes what, just two titans walking away with exactly what they earned. Nicole keeps her empire. The movies, the production credits, the TV deals, the brand endorsements. Keith keeps his touring empire, his catalog, his royalties. Separate, simple, final. It's like they'd built their love story knowing one day they'd need an escape hatch. No entanglements, no messy litigation, no chaos, just clean signatures and goodbye. And that's what's so chilling. It's all too calm, no explosive hearings, no leaked recordings, no angry statements. It's eerie how peaceful it all looks on paper. Because when a Hollywood breakup looks that neat, it usually means one thing: the emotions were dead long before the ink dried. 19 years, 2 kids, multiple homes, and 0 public blow-ups. That's not harmony, that's distance. It paints the picture of 2 people who perfected the act of looking stable while quietly living separate lives. At the end, they weren't saving their marriage. They were protecting their brands. Nicole, the queen of composure, learned long ago and after Tom Cruise that silence is power. No drama, no chaos, no tears for the press. She handles heartbreak like a chess player, not a victim. Every move calculated, every public word weighed. Keith, on the other hand, built his redemption story around her, the country star saved by love. For years, that narrative sold records and filled arenas. But now, the truth inked in those filings strips away the fairy tale. Because this isn't a story about betrayal, it's about a man who quietly chose the stage over the home he built, and a woman who finally decided she didn't need to wait for him to come back anymore. The irony in this whole story could break your heart. Keith Urban once said Nicole Kidman saved his life, and he meant it. Back in 2006, when his addiction was spiraling and everything he'd worked for was hanging by a thread, Nicole stepped in. She staged an intervention, got him into rehab, and stood by him through every setback. He went public later, calling her his rock, his angel, the one who never gave up. But somewhere along the way, that kind of love, the selfless, soul-deep kind, got lost in the noise of stadiums and spotlight. The devotion that once pulled him out of darkness couldn't compete with the rush of fame, the high of applause, and the thrill of millions cheering his name. And Nicole? She didn't storm out. She didn't break down. She slipped away quietly. By the time she filed for divorce, the marriage was already just an illusion. Smiling photos masking silence, public warmth hiding private emptiness. People close to her say she had been carrying the emotional weight for years, holding the house together while Keith lived out of suitcases. He wasn't mean. He was just gone. Always gone. And sometimes, that absence hurts worse than any betrayal could. Even their peaceful financial split tells a story. The story of emotional exhaustion. There was no courtroom fight, no shouting, because there was nothing left worth fighting for. Nicole didn't want his fortune. She wanted freedom. She didn't want revenge. She wanted rest. And Keith, he didn't resist because deep down he knew she'd already been gone for a long time. Now, as Keith keeps lighting up arenas with that charming smile, Nicole's rebuilding. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deliberately. She's focusing on her daughters, her work, and her peace. She's doing what she's always done when life turns chaotic, turning pain into purpose. And that's the twist nobody saw coming. The woman everyone once called too private, too composed, might just be the one who truly figured out how to protect her peace in a world built on noise. The world always saw them as Hollywood's fairy tale, the elegant movie star and the reformed country boy who made it. But this fairy tale didn't explode. It quietly evaporated. No scandals, no explosive fights, just whispers, contracts, and signatures. In the end, Keith kept his stage, Nicole kept her family, and maybe that's the real message. Sometimes love doesn't end with chaos, it ends with quiet acceptance that one person outgrew the dream while the other never stopped chasing it. So when you look at those numbers, 306 and 59, don't just see a custody deal. See the emotional math of a marriage that faded with time. Two people who loved hard, tried harder, but eventually realized they were living in two different worlds. And that perfectly clean financial separation after nearly 20 years together? That's no coincidence, that's design. You don't get a breakup this calm without a rock-solid prenup. And of course, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban had one. Think back to 2006. Nicole was at her absolute peak, fresh off her Oscar win, adored by Hollywood, and just 4 years out of that painfully public divorce from Tom Cruise. She wasn't walking into another marriage blind. She walked in with wisdom, experience, and a lawyer who knew exactly how to protect her future. She made sure her heart could take risks, but her bank account couldn't. And Keith, he signed without hesitation. He knew their finances would always stay separate. Love and money would never mix. That's not cold, that's smart. It shows that even at their most in love, they both quietly understood a truth most couples never face. Forever isn't guaranteed, so they built something that could end without destruction. Now, almost 20 years later, that very prenup is doing its job. No chaos, no lawsuits, no bitter battles, just 2 signatures and 2 lives walking away clean. But that kind of efficiency says something deeper. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't impulsive. It was a slow motion ending that both of them saw coming. The prenup that once protected them from outsiders now protects them from each other, and it's doing it with surgical precision. Follow the timeline and it all falls into place. June 26th, 2025. Nicole and Keith post matching anniversary tributes online, smiling like everything's fine. The photos show laughter, affection, forever captions, the kind of thing that melts fans' hearts. But behind those smiles, the countdown had already started. Just 5 weeks later, August 1st, 2025, Keith signs the permanent parenting plan, agreeing to only 59 days of visitation a year and prepaying every dollar of child support. The ink was dry long before anyone knew. By the time TMZ broke the story on September 29th, the marriage had already been legally mapped out for weeks. And the very next day, September 30th, 2025, Nicole filed the official papers, listing that same day as the separation date. But Keith's earlier signature exposes the truth. The real goodbye happened 2 months before the headlines ever hit. They didn't just wake up one morning and decide to split. They orchestrated the ending, negotiated it, planned it, and still smiled for the cameras in between. They even celebrated a 19th anniversary they knew would be their last. That's not romance. That's media management. That's public relations wrapped in affection filters. And Nicole's own words now sound almost prophetic. When promoting her 2024 Netflix show, The Perfect Couple, she was asked if the title reflected her own marriage. Her answer: "You're heading for trouble if you consider yourselves the perfect couple. I'm not a believer in perfect." That wasn't just humility, it was foreshadowing. She already knew perfection was a myth. Then, months later, in her Hollywood Reporter interview, Nicole said, "We have breakfast together every morning and dinner every night. How do we do it? I'm kind of not sure." That tiny line, "I'm kind of not sure," hits hard now. It wasn't confusion, it was quiet truth. A weary acknowledgement from a woman holding everything together by herself. And according to insiders, their friends saw it coming long before the rest of us did. Rumors started to swirl, not about cheating, but about absence. Some even linked Keith to his touring guitarist Natalie Stovall, but she's been happily married for 17 years. The whispers weren't about scandal, they were about solitude, about a man who spent more nights with his band than with his family. That's the core of it. Not betrayal, not chaos, but priorities. Keith chose the roar of the crowd. Nicole chose the quiet of home. Keith kept chasing the music. Nicole kept raising the daughters. And after 19 years of trying to sync those two worlds, they finally admitted what everyone else was afraid to say. Love can't survive when you live on opposite schedules. Nicole didn't need interviews or tearful statements. She let the math do the talking. 306 days versus 59. That's not just a schedule, that's a confession. The court filings don't shout, they whisper. They whisper that one parent showed up every day while the other showed up when he could. And that's what makes this divorce so haunting. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't bitter, it was inevitable. The kind of ending that happens when passion fades, distance grows, and both people quietly realize the dream they built together doesn't fit anymore. So what about you? Do you think this was just about busy schedules? Or was there something deeper behind all that calm? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, share this with someone who still believes in perfect couples, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive deep dives. See you on the next one.